And thou in this shalt find thy monument, when tyrants' crests and tombs of brass are spent. It is not just the poor rhyme that is the monument, but it is the love that it points to that is the permanent monument of life against all feared endings. Welcome to Ostracon, a podcast that translates fragments into the whole from which they came. Today we're reading Shakespeare's 107th sonnet. Shakespeare is thought to have been born about 1564 and died in 1616. It's believed that he died on his birthday, April 23rd. The sonnets, according to my edition, are believed to have been written during the last 5 to 7 years of the 16th century. They were first published in 1609, apparently without the consent of Shakespeare. Their introduction is much disputed and was not written by Shakespeare, but it wishes that eternity promised by our ever-living poet, and wishes the well-wishing adventurer in setting forth. And taking that cue, let's read. Not mine own fears, nor the prophetic soul of the wide world dreaming on things to come, can yet the lease of my true love control, supposed as forfeit to a confined doom. The mortal moon hath her eclipse endured, and the sad augurs mock their own presage. Incertainties now crown themselves assured, and peace proclaims olives of endless age. Now with the drops of this most balmy time my love looks fresh, and death to me subscribes, since, spite of him, I'll live in this poor rhyme, while he insults over dull and speechless tribes. And thou in this shalt find thy monument, when tyrants' crests and tombs of brass are spent. This sonnet describes the triumph of love over death, but it is not speaking merely of romantic love. While it can be read that way meaningfully, it would be to reduce the sonnet to read it only that way. It is speaking of the triumph of an eternal, an unending love, to which the love between us points. Let's read the different sections and follow this line through the sonnet. We begin. Not mine own fears, nor the prophetic soul of the wide world dreaming on things to come, can yet the lease of my true love control, supposed as forfeit to a confined doom. So love is not limited by fear. And even though the speaker confesses to having fears, those do not limit the speaker's love. And neither can the world's prophecy, the prophetic soul of the wide world dreaming on things to come. This can be all aspects of the world prophesying what it may achieve. That is, all aspects of its conquest of nature, of peoples, of governments, of technology, of power. All the prophecy of the world is unable to control or reduce the permanence of love. These things, the speaker's fear and the world's prophecy, suppose that love is both confined and doomed, but it is neither. It reminds me of the line from the gospel that perfect love casts out fear. Fear of ending, of impermanence, of vulnerability can cause us not to love. Fear of our enemies or anything that oppose us can cause us not to love. But perfect love casts out this fear and eliminates its limitations. This includes eliminating the limitations in our personal relationships, but also the limitations imposed upon ourselves when we believe the world's prophecy, the false prophecy that its power is supreme and that love has been forfeited to a confined doom. But the poem confirms that nothing that the world could become, whatever it may prophesy of its own ascendancy, nothing that it could become can strip the human person of true love. And why would that be? Because the human person is in the image of God, who is love. And nothing that the world becomes can rob us of this image, of this destiny, of this potential. So we move to the second section. The mortal moon hath her eclipse endured, and the sad augurs mock their own presage. Incertainties now crown themselves assured, and peace proclaims olives of endless age. So the shadow has passed, the shadow over the mortal moon. So maybe the shadow over our mortality. It has passed because the false prophecies, contrary to love, have been proved false. The word augurs are those who try to predict the future. And here they're sad because their predictions are wrong. They mock their own presage, which is another word for omens. So they've given up on their worldly omens as false. And instead, we have peace. But it's not a temporary peace. The narrator proclaims a more deep and more fruitful peace, an endless peace, and a deeper reality. Peace proclaims olives of endless age, suggesting that when we move out of fear, when we move out of the false prophecy of the wide world dreaming on things to come, then we receive not a temporary peace, like the transient promise of the world that may bring temporary satisfaction. Instead, we access a deeper and permanent peace, a deeper reality that is aligned with the revealed truth that love is not confined, that love is not doomed and cannot be limited. And then we have this really interesting line that uncertainties now crown themselves assured. And this line can be read in two different ways. And though they have different meanings, they support one another. The first way to read uncertainties crown themselves assured can be that it is assured that things remain uncertain. And this would be the uncertainty of the omens that are talked about before. While they pretended to be certain, now their uncertainty is assured. But the other way that you can read it is that uncertainties now crown themselves assured. Things that were thought to be uncertain are now known to be certain. This in reference to the love that was claimed to be forfeit to a confined doom. That uncertainty has been removed, and now it is crowned assured that love goes on despite these claimed uncertainties of the world's prophets. You see this same kind of paradox of uncertainty and assuredness in the triumph of love represented by the crowned Christ on the cross, crowned with thorns, a love that is certain as it goes to death, certain that it has power over death, even while those who looked on had never envisioned love like this before, and they doubted. They thought that death would win before the resurrection. But love is not subject to death. It goes through death to life. So in the image of the crucified Christ, the uncertainties of life, of existence, are eliminated, and the eternity of love is crowned assured. The shadow of death has passed. The mortal moon hath her eclipse endured. The shadow, the fear, the thought that there is nothing more is over. And now, while life certainly remains full of uncertainties, fears, omens, prophets of the world who claim them to be absolute, we have access to the deeper truth, the deeper peace, because of the endurance of love that is crowned as assured. These thoughts are made explicit in the following final lines. Now with the drops of this most balmy time, my love looks fresh, and death to me subscribes, since spite of him I'll live in this poor rhyme, while he insults o'er dull and speechless tribes. So the revelation that we have described brings a time of balm, being pleasant, warm, and healing. And the former omens are reversed. Where they had said, love submits to death, now the narrator says, death subscribes, that is, submits to the speaker's message of love's endurance. Death cannot succeed. This again suggests the identity of Christ, who in the passion and resurrection takes death and suffering itself and transforms it into a means of love and salvation, transforms it from an ending to a beginning, so that even death is changed into something subject to God's will for life and salvation. It is transformed into something generative. And the speaker says, I'll live on in this poor rhyme. The poor rhyme is the message of truth, the message of the truth of love and its endurance. And as love survives and is not confined or doomed, so its truth survives. And that truth is told in different ways. This narrator tells it in this way, through this poor rhyme. And the humility of speaking the greatest truths in the humblest or poorest ways is something that we see in God again and again, that the weak of the world shame the strong, that the foolish of the world shame the supposedly wise. Read the Beatitudes, that David, the small shepherd, wasn't expected to be king, that Christ was a carpenter, born from a descendant of kings that now was poor and had no throne. This poor rhyme is the thing that this poet can give. It's a flash of brilliance. It's ink and paper. In some ways, it's amazing that it has survived, but it does survive as love survives contrary to the omens of the world. And even if the pen to paper had not survived, the speaker lives in this poor rhyme because the speaker has found the truth conveyed in the poor rhyme, even if the pen and paper itself is subject to time and loss. And so we see here that death insults over dull and speechless tribes. Death, because of this truth, is relegated to a meaningless rule, a rule of no real power. And the use of the word speechless is particularly interesting because it is in words in this sonnet that the speaker makes a monument, gives a testament in this poor rhyme. It's in the expression of truth in words that are knowable and articulable that conveys the truth that it is death and not love that is limited. And so this is the way that death is relegated to a place where there is no speech, where there is no conveyance of truth. This makes you think again of the identity of Christ as the Word, the Logos, the intelligible ordering of the universe, the spoken power of creation, the conveyance of truth itself. So it is only over those without truth, without the words, that death holds any sway. And what could that sway be? It could take different forms, not the least of them, the anxieties of living in the omens and the prophecies of the world, living in the present without hope of the future. And you see death insults over those without truth, insults them because death puts them down as mortal, which is below their dignity when they are made for immortality. It is always an insult to call the eternal mortal, to call what is in fact greater than death subject to it. But the question is the insult borne? Is it accepted? Is it believed? Or is it identified as an insult? Do those who are insulted know that it is in fact death and not them that is relegated? And this is partly why the narrator seeks to live in this poor rhyme, to convey this truth and to unmask the insult, leading to these great final lines. And thou in this shalt find thy monument, when tyrants' crests and tombs of brass are spent. So of the tyrants' crests and the tombs of brass, all the false and transient powers of the world, it is not uncertain that they shall end. It is crowned assured that they are destined for ending. Their crowns are subject to the higher powers of time and change. And despite what the prophets of the wide world dreaming on things to come may say about the eternity of this empire or that one, it cannot save them. All the earthly monuments are wiped away. But above their crowns is the crown of that love which is constant, that which is crowned assured. All the false omens that you are destined for nothing but material pleasure and loss are proven false by this constant love. And it is this monument, the only monument that outlasts. It is not just the poor rhyme that is the monument, but it is the love that it points to, that is the permanent monument of life against all feared endings. And that is why this sonnet cannot be relegated merely to the love between two persons, though it is true that that love, when true, is real, lasts, even lasts beyond their death. But beyond that, this sonnet points to something greater. There is only one eternally enduring love that is crowned assured, and that is God, and that is God's identity as love. It is not just our romantic love between persons, but the deeper, purer, permanent love to which it points, the eternal love that allows that love to exist and be real and true. I once had the chance to touch the stone font in which it's believed that Shakespeare was baptized. And to me, that was greater than seeing what is supposed to be his tomb, or the places where he walked, or the rooms in which he moved. To me, it was a thing much closer to seeing his living work, his testament to truth. I thought of the light that came into him in that stone font and then was sent out to the world. And it makes me want to conclude with one of my favorite lines in Shakespeare, which is from Romeo and Juliet, when he comes to visit her on her balcony and she asks him how he got there. And he says, "With love's light wings I o'erperched these walls, for stony limits cannot hold love out. And what love can do, that dares love attempt." Love is winged. Love does what it can do. It dares to do it. Stony limits cannot hold love out.